first poem in the book, which is also kind of dedication. I guess it's the place where a dedication would be. In West Sumatra, they call Rendang Rendang. Neither shares a root with rending. Rose and rose have French and Frisian roots you can't hear. Context makes the difference clear. Here lies one whose name was writ in Bahasa. Here are words I've said in memory of her who I could never speak to. Chandrasari, I call you wrongly. Rend me rightly, rootless and unclear.
Thank you so much. That doubling of elegy and dedication, and also beginning of opening out from there is I think really beautiful. It's sort of laboratory and yet has all this energy and sets out what you're going to do across the whole book. I think especially in terms of language, that word Bahasa you've got there, whose name was writ in Bahasa, not in water but in Indonesian language. Yeah. I wonder if you could talk a bit about the kind of relationship with language that you set out in that poem.
Yeah, because technically that does just mean language. As my mom would say and correct me, Bahasa means nothing by itself. It would just be like saying, I speak language. You know,
okay.
What does that mean? It means it's only Indonesian if you say Bahasa Indonesia, and obviously there are other regional variants like Bahasa Malay. So it's like it's almost consciously nonsensical. You know, here lies one whose name was written in Bahasa, or even just kind of self-evident, tautological. Here lies one whose name was written in language. It's some kind of like meaningless sentiment, but it's kind of meant to chime with that rendang randang thing. The kind of like almost nonsense connections of rendang, randang, rending. Because sometimes that's, I mean, it kind of mimics my own relationship culturally to the Indonesia of my mum's birth, which is almost this kind of like surface thing, almost like a kind of like clear screen where I can like see it. But when I try and touch it, I just like butt my head against it.
I really like your insistence that not everything is related, that you can't make these connections between rendang and rending by alluding to some kind of remote etymology that will magically join all this up. You know, you're keeping the ruptures in there.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with moments of like almost connection. Like originally that was part of a much longer kind of interview poem, and which was me being interviewed about my first collection, which at this point was only jokingly called Rendang. And then at the end of it, I had this little moment where which is kind of links to that, which I wish I could have involved in some way, where I asked what my grandma's favorite food was, and my aunt tells me, I mean, she did tell me that it's spaghetti bolognese, and that's the kind of like pathetic moment which it ends, which I feel like is also I kind of think of when I read that poem sometimes, like my grandma eating spaghetti bolognese in Indonesia, which is just wrong on so many levels.
I love it. So is there a relic of the joke still there in the way you use your title?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it is still a joke. Well, it's kind of like, I mean, I say joke. I mean, it's like a serious joke. I think I obsess over reception. I guess probably as any person of color does, you're always trained not just to talk, but to think about how your words will be received, how you'll be seen as you say those words. And so with a book, especially with the first book, I was just probably too preoccupied with how people were going to read those poems before I'd even written them, in a sense. And so I thought one way to allay that was to, in capital, bold letters, call it Rendang. And I guess I was thinking of, you know, Vani Kapodeya's poem about mangoes. I open the book and a mango falls out. You know, to have this book, which is literally rendang, which is a type of Southeast Asian curry, you don't know, and just which is the cultural signifier of Indonesianness.
So we get the curry on the title page. That you preempted us. We've now had our curry, and you can get on with doing other things that you actually want to do.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully it slightly reorients your relationship to language, because the title is followed by this initial concrete poem. So, so it's playing on your initial idea of what you might expect, which is a book of kind of child of first generation immigrant about their cultural inheritance, you know, Indonesia, whatever, divided cultures, yada yada. And then you get this list of words.
Yeah.
And then so then you're kind of it's kind of like shifting, you know, the kind of like when you go to an optician's and they put different lenses in front of it. That's kind of the effect I wanted it to have. But suddenly you see that, then you see these other words and you think rendition, rendable, render. And suddenly you're seeing what I take to be a more true experience of culture, which is culture mediated through language, mediated through words, through surface. And yeah, and that's kind of the relationship I have to language in a lot of the poems, which is this kind of like slantwise thing, and also through to culture, which is culture mediated through language.